The National Guard in Washington, D.C., immigration, Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia. We have a lot to get to during this live conversation. Oklahoma U.S. Senator James Lankford joining us now in studio. Thank you for taking the time.
Sure,
Welcome
glad
home.
to. It's nice to be home for the week.
I want to start, though, back in D.C. with the National Guard deployed there. You obviously live in D.C. What has that been like? The president has threatened that maybe some other cities need to have a presence as well. What has that looked like from your perspective?
Well, just to be clear, home is here, very definitely, but that is the office I've got to be able to work at, so I do spend half my time up there. People lose track. If you're right around the Washington Mall, around the Capitol, around the White House, those are safe enclaves. But if you go a half mile outside, there are carjackings happening, there's crime, there's lots of violence that's happening. There is a real issue that's there in Washington, D.C., and they keep saying the rate is coming down. It's still more than 4 times as high as it is in Oklahoma City with a population that's very similar. So we've got to be able to get on top of that. What the president's doing is he has the legal authority to do. Washington, D.C. is not a state. It's a federal enclave. He said, I'm going to call up the National Guard for 30 days. We're going to see if we can actually bring the numbers down and get control of this. Doing arrests there with DEA. They're doing drug arrests. They're doing gang arrests. They're trying to do what they can to be able to bring the temperature down in Washington, D.C. That's helpful to the residents that are there. Everyone's making a big deal. This is trying to make it a safe city and a safe streets for the people that live there all the time.
Do you support that? Do you support something similar in a Chicago?
Yeah, when you get to Chicago and other places, it's very different. I want local law enforcement to be able to manage the issues there. I think the president's making a clear statement. Chicago's had a high crime rate for a long time. We want to be able to see that go down. We shouldn't have Americans say that any city in America they're afraid to actually go travel to for business, for tourism, for whatever it may be. So he's making a pretty clear push. Let's get the crime rate down. Let's pay attention to that more. There are multiple cities and communities where there are things like if you steal $1,000 or less, it's a misdemeanor. They're just not going to prosecute you. So people steal more. Well, that's a problem when the crime rate goes up on those in any community. That affects all of us.
I wanted to ask you, in fact, I've wanted to ask you this for a while, actually, talking about immigration reform, something that you've worked very hard on in the past. The vice president, a few months ago, he made a comment, and this is when the border crossings, clearly, they dropped precipitously after President Trump took office once again. And the vice president said, hey, turns out we don't need new laws. We don't need fancy legislation. We just needed a new president. And I thought of you immediately.
Sure.
Because you work so hard on immigration reform laws. And I'm curious if you agree with the vice president or if you think that there is still work that needs to be done.
I want to pass a law so that no matter who is the president, we have clear law and we have a secure border. And I think that's my concern. I said often, I was never worried if President Trump was elected that we wouldn't have a secure border. I don't know who's president 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 20 years ago. Now, I never want to have an open border like we had 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had 12,000 people a day illegally crossing our border, 12,000 a day. That was the highest number ever in the history of the country. I never want that to happen again. The best way to keep that from happening is having strong law to be able to make sure that doesn't occur. So I do think we need good, strong law. It's good to have a president that's going to enforce existing law. It's better to have very strong law that's very consistent.
Are there any conversations about this happening right now, or is that just not?
There are conversations on this. Right now, everybody's very pleased to be able to see a secure border. We had a day last week. We had 88 people even attempt to cross the border.
It's a big
88.
Change.
That's
big
an enormous change.
It's huge.
That has occurred. And so that's helpful because that frees up the Border Patrol to go after people that are drug dealing, not just trying to be able to catch people that are trying to cross to be able to get a job in the United States. That's very different. They can really focus on the true hardcore criminal elements. But there is some conversation. I don't think it's this year or next year. I think it's probably 2 years from now. The president has said, by the way, that he wants to have all DACA recipients become citizens of the United States. I think some people were surprised when he said that publicly. I wasn't. I've heard him say it privately a lot of times. That would take a federal action in the Congress for that to occur.
How often do you talk with the president?
We don't talk every week, but probably every other week. We have some different conversations on different policy issues.
What do you guys talk about?
It depends on what the issue of the day is. I'm kind of go to the core. Let's get some policy stuff done. I'm not a chit-chat guy. The president loves to chit-chat. It's not uncommon for him to call, and we'll spend 30 minutes on the phone chit-chatting on different issues. He wants to know what's going on. That's his way. All the members are his way to get kind of the focus group. What's really happening? What are people talking about? Because when you're the president, you're very surrounded by Secret Service and don't get access to that.
I did want to ask you about what we're seeing internationally when it comes to Israel and Gaza, also Ukraine and Russia. But I want to start with Israel. Obviously, you support Israel.
I do.
Our country is pro-Israel, supports Israel. When you see the images, though, coming out of Gaza, your reaction?
Yeah, our country is pro-Israel, but they're not pro-famine. They're not
Right.
pro-destruction. They're not pro that. We have a core belief as Oklahomans, and I do as a Christian, that every life has value. Every single life has value. And so to see the destruction that's happened there in Gaza is incredibly painful for all of us, but we lose track of the core issue there. Hamas continues to say, as soon as this ends, we're going to come at Israel again. We're going to do another terrorist attack. And they still are holding hostages. 2 years into this, they're still holding hostages. It's terrible for those individuals that have been held in captivity in those tunnels for this time period. Even those that had died, that everyone knows that they died,
Right.
they continue to be able to hold the bodies
Right.
for 2 years. So it's just not humane at all. Israel's been very clear. This war ends the day that Hamas turns our hostages over. That's what we want.
When you, though, look at this, what should the U.S. be doing? What is the U.S. doing to solve those issues? And we can also talk about Ukraine and
Yeah.
Russia as well. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of movement on that. We saw the conversations at the summit, but since then, haven't heard as much.
So a couple things. The United States continues to be able to lean in, to be able to provide negotiators, provide places to negotiate, provide people that will actually be in the conversation. We got to keep the conversation going. If you're going to end a war, it's very hard to do. Once a war starts, it's hard to stop. You got to get conversation going. So we have individuals on the ground trying to get both sides to be able to talk to each other in lots of neutral places. Doing that same thing between Russia and Ukraine is also there. Putin doesn't want to end the war. Putin wants to take over Ukraine. He's been very clear about that from the very beginning. So trying to put enough pressure on Putin that he will stop the fighting, back up from his demands, allow Ukraine to be a free, independent, sovereign nation, and to not have Putin constantly attacking them the next day is going to be tough and is proven to be tough.
We just have a few seconds, but I wanted to get your reaction to what we're seeing in Texas and now in California with this redistricting stuff. Is this going a step too far? The president asking the governor of Texas, I need 5 additional seats. Sure, we'll do this out of the order. We'll do this 5 years earlier than what we normally do. And now California's retaliating with their own. As people that care about democracy, does it worry you that this is a slippery slope that we might be on, where we're just changing the rules as we go?
Well, they're actually not changing the rules on it. They're actually following Texas law. Texas law allows for this kind of redistricting to happen at any point. Most states do it every 10 years. We do it every 10 years. Texas is a fast-growing state, and they're allowed to be able to go through a redistricting
So
process.
this is
in between.
perfectly okay?
So it is legal in that sense. Now, there's a difference between
Legal and
between legal and this
good
is
for
wise.
democracy.
Right. It creates the stir of what we're seeing all over the country at this point, where there's pushback everywhere to say, oh, how are we going to accommodate for that? What I find interesting is the voters in Texas will actually make a decision about this. To be able to say you're going to redistrict an area and that's now going to be a Republican district, no one can really choose that except for the voters in Texas. There's lots of places where they choose and say, this is going to be this kind of district or this kind of state on it, and the voters rise up and they make their own decisions. I still find it funny. Just decades ago, when Alaska and Hawaii both joined the Union, they joined the Union because Alaska was going to be a Democrat state and Hawaii was going to be a Republican state. You know what? It's the opposite on that. So the voters in that area actually will choose in the days ahead. Texas will do its redistricting. California is a different issue because they actually have to vote first to get rid of their redistricting committee.
They'll have to choose twice.
And then have
by
to do
what
it
you're
again
saying.
on it.
Right.
But yeah, they're still following Texas law. Nothing's illegal. It's a prudent issue on that. I don't ever presuppose the voters on that. They'll make their own choices.
Senator James Lankford, we appreciate the time, in district work, home, and then you head back. When do you head back?
I head back the day after Labor Day. We've got a lot to do in September. We've got 12 appropriation bill, the National Defense Authorization, lots of nominations to do.
Should be an easy time. No problem.
Yeah, nice and simple. Yeah.
Nice and relaxing.
Stress-free.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.